Hi, and welcome to Author Uncut. I'm your host and author, Patrice Williams Marks. I've been a sensitivity reader for several years now, officially, and I find myself answering quite a few questions on the subject. And you know what? I enjoy answering all of them because I love being a sensitivity reader. I don't do it full time as I'm an author myself and I'm also the founder of a nonprofit charity, but it would be a wonderful full-time career for myself or maybe even for you. Why do I say that? Well, one, because you are providing a service people actually want. Two, you're helping people. Three, you can inform people. Four, you're doing something positive and sending that out into the universe. Five, you can work from home with very little investment. And six, I think it's great karma. But for now, I'd love to answer the top 10 burning questions you have about sensitivity reading, but we're afraid to ask. Here's number one. How did you get started as a sensitivity reader? Well, I did answer that in a previous podcast, but I'll paraphrase it. I actually was doing this before there was even a name for it. I have a background in screenwriting, as you know, and I would meet with a group of other writers and we would read aloud and critique each other's work. I found myself being asked about Black characters they created, and I'd give my opinions. It was that simple. I also love telling the story. Sorry if you've heard this before, but it's about a screenplay I wrote called Mountains of the Moon, and it's now called The River of the Ribbon. But it was based on a true story of a Hungarian aristocrat, her name is Florence, who was 5 when her family was slaughtered during the Hungarian Revolution of 1848. Now, she survived that slaughter. She was the only one to do so in her family. And about 10 years later, she showed up on a slave block in her teens in Bulgaria. A British explorer by the name of Sam Baker bought her freedom, and they eventually fell in love several years later and went on an epic adventure and journey to discover the source of the Nile. I joined the Royal Geographical Society and flew to London. That was actually my first time to Europe. And I read through the actual manuscripts that Sam had written during this time. It was so fascinating. I then met with the descendants of Florence Baker, and they lived in Salisbury, England. They shared intimate information about Florence that I couldn't have found anywhere else. They also allowed me to read one of her handwritten diaries. I think that is so exciting when you're able to actually speak with someone who knows who you're writing about on an intimate level. So once I returned home, I wrote the screenplay. I then sent a copy to them as I promised and asked if I got any specifics wrong about her or Sam. They knew it was a dramatization of Florence and Sam's life, but still it was important to get certain aspects right. They actually mentioned a few things that were incorrect, and I agreed with them. I made the changes. That could be considered a sensitivity read, despite it not carrying that label. Here's another question. Why are some people against it and call it censorship? Well, this is how I see it. People who are against sensitivity reading fall into either two different camps. Some are not against the service, they just don't like the name sensitivity reader. To those folks, I let them know about other names that we go by, such as diversity editor, targeted expert reader, or targeted beta reader. To those in the other camp who feel the service is censorship, I explain it this way. When a New York Times author hands their book to the publisher, does it go straight to print? Or does it go to an editor who marks it up, makes corrections, and then sends it back to the author for a rewrite? That would be considered censorship as well. For a long time, publishers have used experts when it comes to nonfiction books, so why not fiction? They have to cover their butts and be responsible. If one of their authors writes a book on open heart surgery risk, you better believe they will farm the book out to other cardiologists who will read it for accuracy. Sensitivity readers only make books more accurate, more authentic, and more real, and they enrich the characters. Number 3, how do you convince people to use a sensitivity reader? Well, this is a very simple one. Simply put, I don't. I don't try to change anyone's mind or force them or guilt trip them to use this type of service. I simply offer it to those who seek it as another tool in their tool belt. It's strictly voluntary. Those who do hire sensitivity readers, in my opinion, are responsible, creative individuals who take risks and reach for the stars. They are also fearless when it comes to hiring a sensitivity reader, as it's a very vulnerable thing to do. I keep that in mind when working with other authors and make sure I point out all the wonderful things about their projects as well. Third question, are authors forced to make all the changes from a sensitivity read? The answer is no. Everything is voluntary. We simply provide the research and opinion from years of experience. It is up to the author or the content creator whether they use our suggestions or not. Question 4. Who can become a sensitivity reader? Well, I have to say, not everyone can be. It's not for everyone, just like everyone is not cut out to work for themselves. But for the most part, the types of people I see becoming sensitivity readers are authors, writers, bloggers, screenwriters, and avid readers or bookworms. All of these people should also want to work from home, be well organized, professional, into social media, be very savvy at it, by the way, with an extended background in more than one niche. The next question. What are some niches? These are just some of the niches. African American, Hispanic, Native American, Asian, a veteran, mental health, homelessness, urban experiences, poor communities, Muslim, obese, plus size, biracial, autistic, interracial relationships, LGBTQ, little people, any marginalized group. Here's the 6th question. Can a white person be a sensitivity reader? My answer to that is only if they're part of a marginalized group. Let's say they're gay or obese or a little person or a veteran, because default characters are always white, something from which every minority character is measured by. Also, the majority of authors and publishers are white and have very little diversity within their ranks. Unfortunately, they do not have someone around them from which to bounce ideas off of or to check whether a character written with a white lens is at the very least misinformed or stereotyped and at the very worst, racist. The 7th question. What do you consider racist for a Black character? Well, this is a question which could take up an entire podcast on its own, but here are just a few. All Black characters speak in street or slang as perceived by the writer of what they think Black people speak like. 2. No background or detail on the character to make them a well-rounded character and not a caricature. 3. Describing them by their skin color only. Some authors refer to a character over and over again just by their skin color. 4. All Black characters live in the hood or in poverty and filth and don't have jobs. 5. Black characters are either hookers, dropouts, gangbangers, illiterate, etc. 6. All black characters come from broken homes, mothers who were young when they got knocked up, etc. 7. All black characters are on drugs or deal drugs. 8. Showing natives as backwards, so unintelligent that they need a white savior to lead them. Why don't you check out the original Stargate movie? I think it came out in the late 1980s, and it shows this black tribe who comes across the white military crew from Stargate and bows down to them thinking they are gods. Have you seen this on the screen? It's happened in many movies. Here's another stereotype. Older black characters who have a claw for a hand with no explanation as to why their hand is shriveled up and not part of the story. And then the last one for now, that's a stereotype for black characters, making them a magical Negro, i.e. Bagger Vance, The Green Mile, The Matrix, or Bruce Almighty. Frankly, I could go on, but you get the idea. The 8th question that's been burning is, will you read and complete a sensitivity read when the book is extremely racist? I do know of a sensitivity reader who received a manuscript which was so offensive she refused to read it and handed it back to the writer with a full refund. Now understand where she was coming from. Sometimes you have to protect yourself from material that may affect you, really deeply. I have had only one project which was extremely offensive with racist characters. I had to take a step back and think about the reason the author trusted me with their work. They had an inkling that their characters may be stereotypes, and that is why they contacted me. I see that as being brave and responsible. After I got over the initial shock, and I tell you it was a big shock, I treated it like any other read and explained why their characters were stereotypes and offered solutions. I made it a point to not wag my finger, but to become a partner with this writer. I am there only to make their writing better. I gave the writer suggestions, spelled out in detail why I saw it the way that I did, and provided links for research that they can do on their own. Now, after I wrote it up, I held my breath and sent it back to the author. Within 24 hours, they got back to me, thanking me, and said that is exactly what they were looking for. That was a big sigh, a big relief for me. So yes, I will read those types of books and scripts if the intention is to not hurt and misinform. The 9th most burning question about sensitivity reading is, should writers only write about people like them, write what they know? To that I say, what a boring world that would be. I think that is terrible advice. Books, films, even commercials take you to places you've never been and people you may never meet. I'm not Hungarian, but did I know anything about the Hungarian Revolution? No, but I wrote a screenplay about it as a backdrop. It's called Research. Research the types of places and people you're unfamiliar with and use a sensitivity reader or two in order to create an authentic, rich, and vivid character and locales. Write what captivates you as you'll be living with these characters and their world for many months, even years before it's published. Now, the last burning question that I received quite often is, will hiring a sensitivity reader cover authors from online attacks or books being pulled, like cancel culture or being called out culture, for their racist characters or situations? The answer is yes and no. Remember, we're only human too and are reviewing work from our point of reference. That is why I always suggest that authors and screenwriters and the like hire more than one sensitivity reader, especially if they have multiple major characters from marginalized groups. Let's say you have a gay Hispanic character who has a mental illness, and you hire a sensitivity reader who is Hispanic and gay, but they have no experience with mental illness. That sensitivity reader would only be guessing if the mental illness part of the character is accurate or not. In that instance, it would be prudent to hire another sensitivity reader who is familiar with mental illness, or find a counselor or psychiatrist to review the mental illness angle for accuracy. Hiring a sensitivity reader is always a good idea when you're writing about characters unfamiliar to you. They should be able to catch all major instances or misinformation, but we do not guarantee that your work is free from stereotypes and the like. We also make it a point not to endorse or allow our names to be attached as sensitivity readers. In some cases, the writer chooses not to use our suggestions and keeps the problem areas as is. That's why we've made that decision. So, those are the top 10 most asked questions. Did I miss one that you may have had? If so, contact me through my anchor.fm page. You'll find the link in the show notes. You can leave me a voicemail there, and I may just add it to a future episode and answer your question. If you're interested in becoming a sensitivity reader, go on over to sensitivityreviews.com and sign up for my free 7-day course. You'll know for sure in 7 days if this is something that's for you or not. Join me next time when I share a chapter from one of my books. I really appreciate you listening and subscribing to this podcast on iTunes. And don't forget to rate me on iTunes as well. To get in touch with me, go to authoruncut.com or sensitivityreviews.com. You can also email me your comments and suggestions for future shows at mailbag@patricewilliamsmarks.com. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Until then, write on.